Welcome to today's Explainer. We're taking a fascinating, highly dramatic, and honestly pretty controversial journey into the hidden mechanics of human influence. We're diving deep into a source that meticulously breaks down the rules of power and social manipulation. And what's truly captivating here is the massive tension the creator sets up. They argue that the exact same ruthless tactics used by ambitious courtiers way back in the 17th century are allegedly being deployed right now by modern tech billionaires and hidden global elites to maintain control. So whether you want to understand human psychology on a personal, micro level, or you're curious about these massive macro-level theories of societal control, this explainer is absolutely going to challenge how you view the world.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. The source immediately sets an unapologetically Machiavellian tone with this famous quote from the philosopher Voltaire: "God protect me from my friends. My enemies I can take care of." It establishes a totally counterintuitive premise that threads through this entire analysis, which is that trust is a profound vulnerability. Think about your own life for a second. How often has a complete stranger truly betrayed you versus someone you implicitly trusted? The creator argues that the world is this unforgiving arena where only the strategic survive. So understanding this harsh reality, and specifically understanding the hidden dangers of the people closest to you, is literally step one to acquiring and keeping true power. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the rules of power and manipulation, the danger of friends and boasting, the three-stage control strategy, the social credit system, the power of reputation and attention, and finally, the hidden game. All right, kicking things off with part one, rules of power and manipulation. Moving right along to part two, the danger of friends and boasting. Our source begins with a foundational rule of power. Nothing in life is free, and getting influence requires shifting from naive trust to cold, calculated strategy. This brings us to a huge pitfall: the peril of boasting, and the extreme danger of outshining the master. To show us what this means, the creator points to a stunning historical anecdote from 1661. Nicolas Fouquet, the finance minister to King Louis XIV, really wanted to show off his immense loyalty and competence. So he threw a magnificent, unprecedented 7-course party to honor the king. I mean, picture the scene. You've got custom music playing, fireworks lighting up the night sky, impeccably manicured gardens stretching as far as the eye can see. Fouquet thought this grand display would absolutely cement his position as the king's most indispensable ally. But man, did he severely miscalculate the psychology of power. Because what did King Louis XIV actually see? He didn't see a loyal servant. He saw subordinates stealing his spotlight, threatening his absolute authority, and flaunting wealth that rivaled his own. The very next day, driven by sheer insecure jealousy, the king had his own finance minister arrested. According to the source, Fouquet wasn't just fired. He spent the last 20 years of his life locked in solitary confinement. It's a terrifyingly harsh lesson. Showcasing your brilliance can completely destroy you if it threatens the fragile ego of the person above you. Let's look at another wild historical example to see how this builds into the specific danger of friends. Fast forward to the 9th century Byzantine Empire. Emperor Michael III was nearly killed by a runaway horse, but was saved at the very last second by a lowly stable worker named Basilius. Deeply moved, full of gratitude, and feeling this growing sense of friendship, the emperor brought Basilius right into his inner circle. Michael showered him with wealth and eventually promoted him to become the head of the entire army, completely bypassing far more experienced and qualified generals. But the source notes a crucial, really dark psychological shift that happens when a friend is suddenly elevated like that. Instead of eternal gratitude, moving a friend into a position of unearned wealth and immense power often breeds a toxic, treacherous sense of entitlement. Basilius didn't feel indebted. He felt he deserved it. His greed just expanded. The very man who once saved the emperor's life eventually assassinated him, violently seizing total control of the empire for himself. And this brilliantly illustrates the source's great, completely paradoxical rule of power. A former enemy is actually a far safer bet than a close friend. The creator argues that friends are naturally prone to deadly envy. Because they're close to you, you lower your guard, you share your weaknesses, and that makes their inevitable betrayal much, much more dangerous. On the flip side, if you hire a former enemy, they have absolutely zero sense of entitlement. They are completely desperate to prove their worth, to prove your loyalty, and to show they actually deserve the position. The source literally equates employing friends to putting your hand directly into a lion's mouth without a second thought. An enemy, ironically, is the one who will work tirelessly to keep you secure. Which brings us to part 3, The three-stage control strategy. Now we're hitting a major pivot in the explainer. The creator shifts away from historical anecdotes of interpersonal betrayal and zooms way out to a massive macro level. The source introduces a highly subjective and pretty controversial theory, suggesting that the modern world is currently being orchestrated by hidden elites through a calculated three-stage strategy. Step 1 is what the creator calls the new slavery. The argument here is that inflation isn't just an accident. It's an intentional tool used to completely crush the purchasing power of the middle and lower classes. While regular folks are forced to work endlessly just to survive, the ultra-rich use their leverage to buy up depreciating assets like real estate and stocks at incredibly cheap prices, permanently widening the wealth gap. Step 2, the source claims, involves silencing dissent. The creator asserts that modern society is intentionally kept distracted by trivial entertainment. Meanwhile, anyone attempting to speak the truth, and the source cites the coordinated social media bans of highly controversial figures like Andrew Tate as a primary example of this, is systematically deplatformed and silenced by hidden corporate powers to keep the masses from waking up. Finally, step 3 is total control. The analysis argues that major global crises, specifically pointing to the COVID-19 pandemic, were leveraged not purely for public health, but as an opportunistic test run to normalize stripping away civil liberties and locking down massive populations on demand. Part 4. The social credit system. Building directly on this idea of total control, the source points to real-world surveillance infrastructure as the ultimate endgame of this societal manipulation. And the crucial point rests on this truly staggering number: 620 million. According to the analysis, by the year 2020, China had successfully deployed 620 million facial recognition cameras to actively monitor its citizens. Just think about the sheer scale of that for a second. That equates to nearly one camera for every 2 people in that population. The creator uses this immense statistic to argue that inescapable dystopian surveillance is no longer science fiction. It is a literal reality, designed to track every single physical movement and social interaction in real time. The creator goes on to detail exactly how this surveillance network feeds into a unified social credit score. It asserts that incredibly mundane, everyday activities are constantly tracked, aggregated, and judged by an algorithm. The system allegedly monitors everything, from your daily screen time to your exact sleep and wake schedules, your minute purchase history, your private internet search queries, and especially your social media commentary. According to the source, a low score doesn't just mean a fine. It results in severely life-altering punishments, like being permanently banned from public transport or facing strict travel restrictions. I mean, imagine the psychological toll of the ultimate punishment the source describes: having your face, your name, and your low score plastered on massive public billboards in your own city, intentionally shaming you as a total failure to your community just because an algorithm disliked your search history. To really drive home the terrifying reach of this kind of system, the source brings up the specific, chilling anecdote of Chinese billionaire Jack Ma. For years, Jack Ma was viewed as the untouchable golden child of global tech. He was a man with near-limitless wealth, international acclaim, and immense corporate power. He seemed entirely above the system. Yet after he dared to criticize a financial regulatory policy during a public speech, this globally recognized billionaire simply vanished from public view for over 2 months. The source uses this deeply unsettling event to argue a profound point. In a mature system of total control, absolutely no one is safe. Regardless of your bank account, your influence, or your fame, you are never immune from being entirely erased from the board if you step out of line. All right, part 5, the power of reputation and attention. So how does one possibly survive in a world defined by such ruthless, overwhelming power dynamics? Well, the explainer brings us back down to the individual level, examining the specific tools the source claims are absolutely required to thrive. Chief among them, cultivating a massive reputation. The creator illustrates this with an incredible story from ancient China. General Zhu Zhilang, known as the Sleeping Dragon, found himself trapped in an empty city with only 100 soldiers. Marching straight toward him was a highly lethal enemy force of 150,000 men, led by Sima Yi. Zhu Zhilang knew he couldn't win a physical fight, so instead of panicking, he ordered the city gates thrown wide open. He sat up on the most prominent city wall, burned some incense, and calmly played his lute. When Sima Yi arrived with his massive army, he stared at the open gates and this solitary man playing music. Sima Yi didn't even attack. Why? Because Zhu Zhilang's reputation for brilliant intellect and deadly unseen deception was so immense, Sima Yi just assumed it had to be an elaborate suicidal trap.
he ordered his 150,000 troops to retreat. Zhu Zhiling completely weaponized his own reputation to defeat an army without drawing a single sword. Now, what's really interesting is how this concept of reputation translates into the modern currency of attention. The source highlights an event from 1836 involving the circus world of P.T. Barnum. To drum up business in Indianapolis, the circus owners executed a brilliant, deeply manipulative stunt. They actually hired a man to walk around town in a black suit, intentionally spreading a wild rumor that this guy was a notorious, recently acquitted murderer. It worked perfectly. A massive, angry, curious mob formed and followed the man through the streets, leading them straight into the circus tent, where they were finally told the truth and immediately sold tickets to the show. The lesson the source draws here is stark. Capturing public attention, even if it's entirely negative or built on a fabricated scandal, is a direct, indispensable path to power. In the game of influence, if you're invisible, you're powerless.
Finally, Part 6, The Hidden Game.
As we wrap up this explainer, we arrive at the source's overarching final conclusion. The creator summarizes their entire worldview by asserting that life is fundamentally not what it seems on the surface. They argue that history, as it's taught in traditional schools, is heavily sanitized to keep people docile, and that the modern world is essentially a complex, rigged game orchestrated by ancient, hidden forces of deception. The analysis metaphorically compares these forces to entities playing a massive, long-term game against the entirety of humanity. And that leaves us with this final, deeply provocative question presented by the source. Are you a player in this game, or just a pawn? The creator argues that to even begin playing the game, you first have to wake up and realize you're standing on the board. Whether you agree with the brutal historical Machiavellian tactics of using enemies over friends, or the sweeping modern conspiracy theories regarding inflation and social credit scores presented in this material, it undeniably challenges you to question the nature of authority, the reality of your own free will, and your actual role in society. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning what you see.